Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. It is remaining fairly cool and fairly unsettled. However, we are starting to see some changes in that day 5 to day 10 forecast. As we'll see on the GFS, GM, Eastern WF and the ensembles, we could be seeing quite a deep area of low pressure move it through during the middle of next week, around day 5, day 6. Could be quite vicious, could be quite stormy in places. But as we head towards next weekend, so in a little over 7 days' time, as a result of these low pressure systems in the Atlantic eventually sweeping through, high pressure builds towards our east, we can actually see quite a hot southerly plume appear for a couple of days. So we're not seeing anything too drastic. We're seeing perhaps a day or two of something a bit stormier, and then perhaps something a bit hotter appearing as well. Again, not concrete, but definitely trends that are appearing or continuing to appear within the output. So very interesting to see what the models are showing, specifically the ensembles are showing in the second half of the video, especially for the potential for a bit of heat appearing in around a week's time, around the 7th or 8th of July. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, at the moment we are stuck in a warm sector. As you can see at the moment, a warm sector doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be warm, but it is a warm plume of air within the low pressure system. We've got a warm front out to a front, and there'll be a cold front sweeping in behind through tonight into tomorrow. But in this warm sector, it's high dew points, a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture and water vapour. And what it means is we've got lots of thick cloud, low cloud, and lots of patches of light to moderate rain. You can see pretty much widespread risk of light to moderate rain. A few heavier pulses through parts of Scotland, but as I said, most of it is light to moderate. So it's not the sort of rain that gives you high rainfall totals, of course, flooding or anything like that. It's the sort of rain that just gets you a little bit soaked out there, but isn't too miserable. But it's the fact that it's widespread. It's just a not particularly pleasant day. Probably the first time in quite a while we've had rain up and down the country in this sort of manner of on and off. Again, the Far East is best, and parts of Republic of Ireland are now best as we do start to clear away from the warm sector. But yeah, we've been highlighting this day for a number of days now as being quite a miserable day. Hasn't seemed too bad where I am outside, bits of on and off drizzle, nothing too bad, and the temperatures are not too low, but still not what you'd be expecting for the final day of June. If you put on the temperatures just for 4 p.m, you can see it isn't a particularly warm day. Yes, some highlighted areas of orange here, but again, temperatures really only climb into the high teens, nothing spectacular at all in most regions, below average. You see with the warm areas well to our south, and our east now into an Atlantic flow. This is generally a warmer sector, but it's an Atlantic flow, so it is generally cooler than anything coming from the east or the south. Now, if you put on the UKV and have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, you can see all of that precipitation moving through the rest of today and will continue through this evening to sweep through. As we head around midnight, things will start to slowly climb down. You can start to see some clearer skies developing across parts of Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and that is the dry slot moving in, the cooler, drier air off the Atlantic behind the cold front. That does eventually sweep through again. It's not a particularly active cold front, but it does change that air mass so things are less drab and less rainy. And it should mean for the 1st of July into tomorrow afternoon that showers are few and far between, especially with southern areas, but further northwards could be a few heavier showers through the afternoon. But as we head into Saturday evening into Sunday, could be some more persistent rain for the northeast of Scotland, but widely not too bad into Sunday. Again, showers in the north. Through into Monday, still more showers and actually creeping further southwards. Could see some persistent rain in the southwest and across the far north of Scotland. And we need to pinpoint these areas a little bit better in the next couple of days for rainfall. And then as we head into Tuesday, we see more showers and more areas of rain coming in. Again, could be a little bit heavy and thundery in places there. Again, nothing too severe, but definitely some deeper reds appearing there than we've seen on the previous day. So it could be interesting seeing how those showers do develop. And as I said, it's just outside the time frame of the UKV. We could start to see the risk of something a little bit stormier, a little bit windier, as a deep area of low pressure moves in. Now, if you look on the temperatures, you can see this afternoon really struggling around the mid to high teens or even low teens in northern regions. Really not particularly great. Again, showing here 20 degrees across East Anglia, but looking at this, most areas won't have reached 20 degrees today, if any at all. Quite a change to what we've had recently. If you look at Saturday, first day of July, responds a bit better. By the afternoon, 23 or 24, that's the result of more sunshine. And yes, it's probably a fresher air mass tomorrow, but with the sunshine out, it does increase those temperatures a lot higher and very little rainfall further southwards. Into Sunday, again, you could see the temperatures rise to the low 20s, 21 to maybe 23, but once again, further northwards and westwards, only mid to high teens. Into Monday afternoon, again, could see low 20s, but only maybe just touching 21 or 22, so again, nothing too great. And then finally into Tuesday here again, 20 to 21. So we're really trending average to below average. Again, London's top temperature in July average is around 23 to 24 degrees. Again, it does differ between what source, but roughly it's around that 23 or 24 degree mark. And here we're a couple degrees below that, and further northwards the average is lower, of course, and even there we're lower than the average as well. So definitely pretty cool feel out there over the next 5 days or so. You can see at the moment the dew points are very high this afternoon, around the mid-teens, and that's why we've got so much moisture around and rainfall. But as we head into tomorrow, look at those dew points drop drastically. The upper air temperatures as well do drop drastically tomorrow by maybe 5 degrees or so. But it's actually 5 degrees warmer tomorrow because of the sunshine again. Just shows you how sometimes the upper air temperatures can be a little bit deceiving because of the cloud and rain. But generally, over the next 5 days or so, air masses will generally be cooler than average, and there is the risk of briefly warm patches moving in, but again, normally associated with low pressure systems and rainfall. And just at the end, you can see westerly flow coming in here, low pressure systems close or nearby. Wind gusts, nothing too crazy here. We'll have to keep a very close eye at this day 4 and day 5 range over the next day or two. There is the risk, as I said, of deeper areas of low pressure moving in during the middle of next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday time. But if we do focus on the longer range now, we're able to see the potential for some stormy weather and also the risk of a little bit of a hotter spell for a few days around that 7th or 8th of July. So you can see generally westerly winds continuing to dominate over the coming days into early next week, generally a northerly wind. But then we have to keep an eye on this Atlantic system through Thursday into Friday that does spiral in and could give us some stormier conditions. But equally, as it does initially develop, we could pull up some very hot air. So it could be unsettled initially. Again, you can see upper air temperatures are not too exceptional initially and could be quite stormy as that low pressure does spin up. But as that low pressure eventually stays out in the Atlantic, it could push up a hot piece of air. So this sort of stormy and hot spell could be coincided with one. Other runs have low pressure developing and then the southerly wind coming in. Here, low pressure developing and that southerly wind comes in as the low pressure deepens. So sort of hitting two in one here. Again, it's not ridiculously hot. 15-degree isotherm moves in. And it's hot. It's 30-degree weather, but we're unlikely to see that because of the pressure patterns. It most likely would be quite thundery and quite unsettled. Again, if we have a look at the Cape here, you can see moderate to high levels of Cape. Again, we won't look at this in too much detail as it is so far away. Again, it's very unlikely to be accurate, but you can see the more active levels of Cape here through northern Europe indicate hot and humid air, plenty of energy for thunderstorms to develop within that low pressure system. As we head beyond that, eventually low pressure moves out into the Atlantic and we stay in a generally westerly flow. High pressure could start to build in right in the extended range, but we're in cooler air masses, so even if the high pressure does build in, it won't be particularly pleasant really in terms of temperatures. It probably still would be high teens, low 20s. If we look at the GM, compare that, again, you can see westerly flow coming in over the coming days, and that's continued to dominate. Eventually, we could see low pressure spin in around Thursday, Friday time, and then eventually we do pull up the southerly wind as the high pressure to our east builds. So initially, quite a deep area of low pressure, quite stormy. You can see the winds very strong out in the Atlantic. Perhaps could impact southwest England, southern Wales, and southern parts of the Republic of Ireland. But eventually, as that low pressure system continues to develop and sits out in the north into the Atlantic, it does put up a very hot southerly wind. Even hotter air mass moves in here, with quite a large area of 15 plus degree air mass moving in. And again, this could give temperatures in the mid to high 20s, maybe even touching 30 degrees here. But again, we're very much dependent on the pressure levels. If you look at the precipitation, rainfall's never too far away with this deep area of low pressure out to our west. Really is the dividing line. This is further eastwards. That hot air, we get entangled with these showers, and we would see a lot of thunderstorms potentially. But if it does play out like this, with drier slot, a bit higher pressure building in with that hot air, it would mean that thunderstorms could develop further westwards, but eastwards could be in more of a hotter, drier spell. So just some small deviations from between the runs here, but it could make all the difference come next weekend. If you look at the ECMWF, again, a westerly flow continuing to move in at the moment. Eventually, northerly winds move in, and you see by Wednesday, Thursday, ECMWF produces quite a deep area of low pressure before any hot air moves in. Here, the winds would be very strong, especially on the southern and western edge of this system. Look at that, very strong winds moving in. And then eventually it does move out into the North Sea, and then we could start to track up a very warm air from a secondary low. So ECMWF, again, having this low pressure system developing into a hotter southerly flow, but develops the deep low pressure system before any hot air gets dragged in, moves that through, and then it develops another low pressure to drag up the hot air. So the ECMWF having stormy weather arriving there as early as maybe Tuesday evening, Wednesday or Thursday here, before eventually developing a new low pressure system into the weekend, which then does draw up that hot air. Again, not quite as hot as the GM or the GFS, but nevertheless hot enough to give thunderstorms and temperatures to rise into the mid to high 20s, maybe even 30 degrees. So do look at the ensembles. You can see this well reflected here. Generally cool and unsettled over the next 5 days. You can see the brief bump in up air temperatures at the moment in the warm sector, but mostly below average. You can see this peak in precipitation here. That's when a deep low pressure system could move in middle of next week, 5th of July point. But as we head towards the 7th, 8th, we do see a bump in upper air temperatures where many go towards the 15 degree point. So it could be a brief little 2 or 3 day heat wave there. Or hot spell before we do trend towards average. So it's not a major change, not a sort of hot and dry period coming up. Technically not even heat wave. You need 3 consecutive days of above heat wave thresholds, and we're very unlikely to hit that with this sort of pattern. But it's one of these 1 or 2 days blasts of heat from the south that is really starting to crop up. It's not going to be settled. We've got quite a lot of precipitation here, so there's also the risk of quite a bit of thunderstorms. If we look at the dew points, very high dew points right now, and that is causing all that cloud, drizzly, light rain sort of pattern and oppressive feel, but dew points should be lower the next 5 days, so it should be fairly decent out there. Temperatures, again, nothing spectacular. Again, these are London temperatures. Elsewhere is likely to be cooler, struggling around 19 or 20 degrees here. But as we head towards next weekend, you see the sudden spike going from 20 degrees on sort of Wednesday, Thursday time to Saturday, 25 to maybe as high as 30. So we'll have to see exactly what happens in the longer range. But definitely signs there could be some very abrupt changes, not lasting particularly long, not being stormy for long, with deep low pressure system moving in potentially, not being particularly hot for long, maybe 1 or 2 days. But could be some very big contrasting conditions over the next week or 2. Just to compare to the ECMWF, again, we do see a similar pattern in terms of cool over the next 5 days, quite a big unsettled spell on the 5th of July again, likely coinciding with that deeper low pressure system developing, and then a bit of a spike in upper air temperatures. But actually the ECMWF holds on to those upper air temperatures a little bit longer, or at least tails them off a lot slower. Still very unsettled, but it could mean that there's more a blocked pattern with us in a showery but warm or hot spell. So we'll have to see. Again, that's heading into the middle of 3rd of July where things are very uncertain, but that definitely has increased in the last day or so, this possibility of some hotter air appearing around that 8th to 10th of July point. So we'll have to see exactly how it does play out over the next few days, but the next 5 days or so doesn't look like too much is going on. Risk of something a bit stormier, maybe Tuesday to Thursday time, again have to pinpoint that, and the risk of some hotter air returning as we do head towards next weekend in around 7 to 9 days' time. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Hope you are enjoying the slightly cooler weather we do have at the moment, and do see plenty of dry weather as well. But I'll see you again for another video soon.